I've played a fair bit of Warzone, plenty of solos play and even more duos trios games. In nearly every single lobby, players stick to running SMGs, assault rifles and snipers. Hardly anybody runs shotguns, and I just don't know why. In my opinion, shotguns are one of the best weapon classes in this game. They're absolutely lethal at close range, they're very easy to use, and there's plenty of choice and customization available. So I'm going to dedicate this video as to why I think more people should be using shotguns in Warzone. I'll be discussing pros and cons of them, how to use them effectively, as well as my personal tips for getting the most out of them. First up is the pros of using shotguns, as I really think there's a lot of these that are overlooked by players. Everyone knows that shotguns are capable of dropping enemies at point blank range extremely quickly, but I don't think people appreciate how easy they are to use. Shotguns are a great choice for experienced players and beginners alike. The R90 is capable of dropping enemies in 2 shots, while other guns, like the Origin 12, make use of a high fire rate to accomplish the same thing. There is never going to be a situation where having such high damage output isn't useful. With an SMG or assault rifle, you need to demonstrate sustained accuracy in order to drop an enemy quickly. You've got to scope in, accurately track them for a period of time, and deal with any fire coming your way. Using a shotgun is a completely different experience. Say you're using a pump action gun like the R90. You only need to land 2, 3, or a maximum of 4 shots to get the kill. You don't even have to aim in to get the most out of a shotgun, which is something I'll cover in greater detail in a moment. You can make the most out of the need to only land singular shots by peeking cover and staying careful. As a result of the high damage output of a shotgun, you simply don't need to be accurate for a great deal of time. So long as you're accurate enough to hit the few shots that you do shoot, you have exponentially less accuracy concerns to worry about. This ties in very well with the aiming in point I raised earlier. With SMGs or assault rifles, enemies need to scope in to track you effectively. This will lower their movement speed, in turn making them an easier target for you. Given that a shotgun is best used at close range, you should have no trouble hitting a slow moving enemy at point blank. Every shotgun in my opinion is best used when hip firing. It allows you to keep up your movement speed, making you harder to hit. Yes, you can hip fire with an SMG, but the damage output is far more inconsistent than with a shotgun. You can either stick a laser on a shotgun, and this will make your life easier. The amount of time you actually need to be accurate with a shotgun is so incredibly low that it's remarkable. Given that you simply need to get the crosshairs vaguely over where the enemy is, and let the pellet spread do the rest of the work, you're at a massive advantage over the enemy. If placing precise shots with a pump action shotgun isn't to your liking, stick the Origin 12 shotgun on. The whole point of this gun is to eradicate the need for aiming entirely. You've got a default magazine of 8 shells that can be used to lay down a wall of gunfire for a decent amount of time. At this point, you barely need to scope in at all, as you're simply outputting so much damage that anyone caught in the line of fire will perish immediately. Depending on your playstyle, you can pick a shotgun that fits your strengths. If you're concerned with accuracy or don't like aiming at all, use the Origin as it removes the need to do so. If you fancy an extra bit of range and are confident in your single shot accuracy, use a pump action like the R90. Either one is a good choice and has its advantages in certain situations. Which one you use should be based on personal preference. Another major perk of using a shotgun that also goes under the radar is how useful they are for clearing buildings. Everyone knows the stress of venturing into a new area and having to sweep rooms to make sure no one is lying in wait for you. Having a shotgun to hand makes this a far easier, more stress-free experience. You're going into a close quarters environment with a gun that is perfectly designed for that scenario. With a shotgun, they literally get more powerful the closer to an enemy you are. If someone takes you by surprise when you have a shotgun equipped, then no gun will be able to output as much damage in a short space of time. Due to the fact that you don't have to scope in to achieve maximum effect, the amount of time between you seeing an enemy and laying down effective gunfire is much shorter. I appreciate this can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to break this point down clearly. If an enemy has a normal gun, they need to aim in on you to do maximum damage. This takes time. With a shotgun, you skip the aiming in part. You can deal massive damage before an enemy even aims in on you. Even if the enemy starts shooting first, the spread of their bullets is unlikely to hit you enough to do major damage, whereas you, with a shotgun, can decimate their health without needing to worry about this. One of the greatest strengths of shotguns is that they shorten reaction times enormously. There's so much less thinking with a shotgun. Just point, shoot, and carry on. It makes getting taken by surprise a lot less of a concern. Tying this back into the point of clearing out buildings, and I'm sure you can see why I think this is such a strong perk of shotguns. Knowing you have the maximum close quarters damage output at close range makes the process a lot easier. Granted, this is reliant on decent reactions, but this point also applies to any other gun. Now, in order to keep this video balanced, I'm also going to discuss some of the cons of shotguns. The obvious one is range. Yes, if you see an enemy more than 10 feet away, say they're across the road or in a different building, then a shotgun is useless. But that's nothing new. In fact, I think this point is almost entirely redundant. If you've got a long-range thermal sniper designed for cross-mapping enemies, then this is also useless in this scenario. Shotguns get a bad rep because there's a misconception that they're only useful in specific and rare scenarios, but that's true of a lot of guns. How you use a gun is far more important than what its stats are. Sure, if you try and shoot building to building with a shotgun, it won't end well for you, and there are far better guns suited to this. And if you're caught out in the open, a shotgun won't be much help, but if you're caught out in the open with sniper or marksman rifles equipped, chances are they're going to be pretty useless as well. Every gun has its limitations, and I don't think these should be levied unfairly against shotguns. If you play a shotgun like you play an assault rifle, you'll die, but if you play to its strengths, it's a totally different ballgame. Provided you carry a secondary with multiple range capabilities, such as an assault rifle or long range SMG, you'll have the ability to react to these scenarios as well as anyone else. Linked closely to this point though is a genuine weakness of shotguns. This is that they indirectly require confidence with a broad range of guns. Assume you select a shotgun from a loadout drop, and assuming you aren't using a wild tactic of picking up 2 loadout drops per life, you'll have to scavenge a secondary weapon. Now this is normal procedure for Warzone, but with shotguns it carries extra pressure. Given that a shotgun is exclusively useful at close range, the other gun you have has to be able to tackle all other ranges you're worried about. At the very least, this means medium to long range. As you can't guarantee any particular weapon in Warzone, you need to be confident with a variety of guns in order to prevent this from becoming a weakness. If you get stuck with just a shotgun, any enemy at range becomes a major problem. Unless you feel confident enough to run a sniper and shotgun combo, you need to forget about long range and sniping entirely. You never want to be in a position where you can't return fire, regardless of the scenario or location. So I would definitely say you need to be competent with a variety of guns to get the most out of running a custom shotgun. Fortunately, M4s, Odins and LMGs are all fairly common, so this isn't too difficult in principle, but it is something to bear in mind and be wary of. Moving on to the third section of this video, I want to discuss the playstyle that suits shotguns best. However, there are some rules that supersede all others that I want to make clear first. Shotguns excel in close range encounters, and consequently are much better suited to buildings as a result. If you don't like close quarters combat or buildings for some reason, then obviously don't use a shotgun. In the closed environment of a building, no weapon is more effective. It allows you to stay mobile and move quickly through areas, as carrying them out becomes far easier like I've already discussed. It's a given that avoiding open and exposed locations when using a shotgun is advised. Regardless of the environment, zone or position you're in, this advice goes above all else. You should focus on playing buildings and prioritise close quarters. With all that out of the way, now I'll cover some general playstyle advice and specific uses for shotguns. The first point to do with playstyle is don't be afraid to push up. The closer to an enemy you are, the more dangerous you become. Using a shotgun is a constant balancing act between closing down enemies at optimum range and staying out of the line of fire. If you down an enemy and know their teammates are going for a revive or are happy you and your mates can take out the remaining players, then go for it. If you hold off for too long, you give the enemy time to re-establish lines of sight on you. Shotguns require a lot of movement to be used effectively, so don't be afraid to get up close and personal with enemies. Combine this with well-timed dead silence use or tactical grenades and you should be all set for easy kills. On the flip side of this, shotguns can also be used to excellent effect when used offensively. Sometimes it simply isn't possible to get close enough to enemies to use a shotgun, so let them come to you. If you can bait out an enemy into pushing your building, they will be in for an awful surprise when you pull out a shotgun in a confined space. Baiting enemies is highly dependent on the enemy you're fighting and the scenario, but again, it's something to bear in mind. Chances are, if your squad gets down, then you're going to get pushed pretty soon. This is the optimal time to switch to shotguns and lie in wait. Using the weapons in this way can serve to turn the tide of any fight in a matter of seconds, as there's simply nothing that they can do to stop you. The high damage output of shotguns means you can catch enemies off guard and provide a major element of surprise. Most often, enemies that come face to face with a shotgun will back off. This creates an advantage you should push and exploit, as chances are they won't be able to get away fast enough to escape you. Another point of play to discuss is when you unexpectedly come across a team. Say the team hasn't seen you, but may well do soon. Usually, I would say engage at distance where you have ample cover, but this won't work with a shotgun. It will force you to use your secondary and remove any potential to use your shotgun as they scatter to cover. This actually leaves you at a disadvantage, as you end up not being able to make use of your most powerful weapon. You're better off waiting a bit longer and getting as close to the enemy as possible. This means you can get the most out of your gun and create a big advantage for yourself. Obviously, this carries a greater risk of getting spotted in the process, but that comes with the very nature of using a shotgun in Warzone. Say the enemy does spot you, then what would normally follow is you running for cover. If you're close enough to use your shotgun, then use it. If not, fall back and figure out a way to give yourself and your team the advantage. I am absolutely not advising anyone to run mindlessly at enemies and hope for the best. This will not end well for you 99% of the time. You need to constantly be aware of your positioning and distance to enemies to remain effective. In a way that is different to most other guns, shotguns are entirely dictated by your proximity to the enemy. Yes, you will have to spend more time moving, which does put you at risk more often, but it's a high risk, high reward scenario. If you get up close with a shotgun, you can decimate entire teams before they can even react. You just have to figure out the best way of doing so on a case by case basis. It's totally possible for any player to use a shotgun. For beginners, they can be a welcome confidence boost. They make moving point to point easier while reducing the risk of dying by coming across an enemy you weren't expecting. As you progress with them, they offer you the ability to wipe out entire teams in record time. They have great offensive and defensive capabilities, and once you get confident with the required movement, you will see the great potential of any shotgun. They can be ideal tools for dropping high kill games as well as going for wins, no matter the mode. I frequently play duos trios, and me and my teammate routinely run shotguns together. The reason for doing so is it allows us to drop an enemy extremely quickly and drop the fight from a 3v2 to a 2v2. Add this to the intimidation factor that shotguns have, and you can see why I'm such a fan of them. Just give them a try and be ready to adjust your playstyle a bit, and I'm sure you'll agree with me.